I'm Brian Van, SportbikeTracker.com, and today we're going to break down the CRG carbon lever install. Not just the levers, we also did the CRG Raceline remote brake adjuster install on our 2018 Suzuki GSX-R1000, our STG project bike. Okay, just gonna open up really quick before we dive into the install, okay? Yeah, that's a lever warning that comes, the fitment warning that comes in all the CRG levers. It is so important, especially in today's day and age where you see all these aftermarket, these cheap copied levers that are available on marketplace sites. I know they look like they're the same, but I promise you they are in fact not. We're gonna show you how they're not in a video we have coming out pretty soon, the truth about motorcycle levers. They can create brake, locking, failure, all kinds of shit. You don't want that, especially with a kick-ass bike like this. You don't put junk levers on a $17,000 Superbike. Absolutely not smart. So, the CRG carbon levers. We now have adjustability here, okay? The adjuster for the brake and clutch, this is a little bit different, okay, than the roll-a-click. All the lever quality is amazing. This is how you adjust the throw for the lever here. For the brake side, the best way to do it is to install their Raceline remote adjuster. Okay, so now I'm able to dial in brake lever length, right? Gap from the bar to the lever while I'm on the track, because you know how these Suzukis are, the brakes get a little warm. Yeah, they'll fade just a little bit. It's not horrible, but man, it's nice. You can start in the exact right place, and then when they get hot and they fade a little bit, you just give this thing a couple of clicks, and you're right back where you started in your happy place. Awesome quality, great parts. Watch the install. I'll show you how I got them on the Suzuki. Okay, so let's begin by removing the stock brake lever. I have a 10 mil socket here on a quarter drive ratchet. I'm gonna break that loose. You can see that the pivot bolt up here has begun to spin too. So now I'll grab the flat bladed screwdriver. Remember, at this point, my GSX-R1000R might look a little bit different than yours. If you've got your stock street bodywork on there still, I've got race fairings. My controls are a little bit different, but at the end of the day, this procedure is going to be pretty much the same. So I want to make sure you get that lock nut off first. So I've got that captured down here. Okay. With the brake lever, the pivot bolt threads into the master cylinder, and that lock nut threads onto the bottom of this pivot bolt. That is a safety to make sure that even if you were to, say, leave this pivot bolt a little bit loose, you're still not going to lose your brake lever because you have that lock nut on the bottom. Go ahead and remove that completely. On the surface, replacing the control levers with some adjustable aftermarket levers seems like a really basic job that anybody can do. How could you possibly f it up, right? Well, let me tell you this. One of the most important parts of your motorcycle is going to be the brake lever. There's two areas where you just cannot make a mistake when you're working on the bike. One is the brake lever. The other one is going to be the throttle. If you've seen my throttle installs, really cautious there. I'm equally cautious in particular about my control levers. As an example, on this bike, and we have a cool video coming out, the truth about motorcycle levers, that'll be here soon. This lever has a radial master cylinder. It attaches to a radial master cylinder, so you have to have this pivot right here, okay? The plunger goes in here, the push rod goes in here, and it needs to be able to pivot back and forth. There cannot be any drag in there that can never seize up, because if it does, what's going to happen is your brakes are going to lock up while you're riding. It's disaster, okay? Yes, I've actually seen that with some eBay, Amazon style, no name, copycat levers with engineering and tolerances. So, control levers have to be done right. Just take a quick look at the CRG. This is the carbon lever we've got here. We have other variants of their levers we're going to be installing over the course of the next week or so. I want you to look at the quality, the finish, the fasteners. Everything here is absolute top shelf. Still, they include in every box lever fitment warning. There's a checklist to run through here, and we're going to cover that here too, right? To run through to make sure that you're safe before you take this bike out. So once again, not the most basic job in the world. All that said, let's jump into the install right now. I need to get this lever prepped and ready to install on the motorcycle. We've got some points of lubrication that are really critical. This is your pivot right here. It's dry now. We're going to put some grease in there. This is your master cylinder push rod pivot. And then I also like to lubricate the inside of the master cylinder where it comes in contact with the flat portion of the lever here. That just makes sure it's going to keep moving and have very little drag. To lubricate inside the holes here, just a little bit of multi-purpose grease. Don't really need a ton. I probably actually have more on there than I need right now. We'll clean up any excess after. I'm using this old Phillips screwdriver to try and apply just a thin, even coat inside each hole. Do that here for the brake pivot. Super critical. And you don't want to have a ton of excess either, because a ton of excess grease, it's going to attract and hold dirt. Get just a little bit now. The flat portions here on the master, where the lever's going to contact it. I want to make sure that I got a little coating there. After we've installed the lever, we'll do just a brief little cleanup if there's any excess. Okay, now let's go ahead and slide this in like so. You want to hold it so that it can't slip out the bottom, especially with the grease in there now. Here is the push rod for the master cylinder. Take a quick look at it, and you know what? I'm going to put just a little bit of grease on the end of this bad boy too. Just a tiny little bit. Now you want to line this up so that the push rod dips into the hole, and you can tell when it's in there if you rotate the lever back and forth and you see that pivot not moving. That tells you you've got it in there. Now we need to get the bolt into the lever. I'm going to hold that with one hand. On my bike, because of the modifications I've made to it, you'll probably notice that my brake reservoir is in a different spot than yours. So it's obstructing our view here a little bit. You need to wiggle the lever around a little bit and maybe even just kind of push the piston of the master cylinder in just a touch until that slides through. Once you've done that, take your flat bladed screwdriver and we'll run this down. And we'll put just a little bit of torque on this until we're ready to install the lock nut on the bottom. Remember, this pivot bolt threads into the bottom of the master, so you'll actually be able to torque this. Whatever you do, do not leave the lock nut off the bottom of this bolt. That lock nut is super important. Okay, just a little bit of torque with a screwdriver. I'm going to check the lever now. Everything feels good, nice and free. You can hear the brake light switch actuating. Take the opportunity now just to wipe away any excess grease. These carbon levers are really pretty slick too. This is one of the multiple designs available from CRG. They've got folding levers, got the Spectrum levers, RC2, right? Tons of variants. Let's get this lock nut threaded on. Okay, and you won't be able to run this down all the way by hand because it does have that nylon insert to lock it in place. So we'll finish that off with a ratchet. You will need to hold the pivot bolt with a screwdriver, okay, to make sure that you're not loosening this as you're tightening the lock nut. So we'll kind of just get it started. I'll put the screwdriver in there and finish this up. You know, due to the controls I've got on this bike right now, the axis here is a little tighter. Your bike's, if it's stock, probably gonna look a little bit different. These are those Attack zero offset clip-ons I'm using. Okay, just like that. Double check, triple check, quadruple check. The adjuster for this is right here. Okay, and this is a little bit different than we see with some of the other, the roll to click or something like that. This has a tension spring. Okay, so tons of adjustment. I'm going to install a remote adjuster on this bike. We'll do that in a subsequent video. Okay, but there is your carbon brake lever install. Regardless of which lever you're using, the procedure that I just used to install it is going to be identical. Now we'll go over and do the clutch side. Okay, the brake, you know, that's the critical one. This is important, but you can argue it's a level of importance as compared to the brake lever for sure. Removal. I've got a 10 mil shallow socket on this 1/4-inch drive ratchet. There is a lock nut that is on the bottom of the clutch lever bolt. I'm just going to go ahead and remove the nut right now. Okay, and once I have that off, we will adjust the clutch cable enough so that we're able to remove the clutch lever with ease. You need to have enough slack in that clutch cable to be able to get the clutch lever on and off the bike. So step one, it's your lock nut here. 2, you want to shorten the clutch cable. So run this in as far as I can. See the slot right here in the adjuster? Needs to line up with the slot in front of the perch. Okay, that should be the most I'm going to be able to get out of it. Pull up on that pivot bolt. Now and you want to be careful too with your clutch switch. Make sure that you don't damage it during removal here. So I almost lost my bushing. So pull that out. Turn the lever upside down. You can see it line up with the slot right there. Like so. Lever is off. We'll clean the perch, clean the pivot, and then we'll get ready to reinstall it using a lot of the same technique that we did on the brake side. Okay, like I said, less important over here, but still we're going to do all the same things we did before. Nice thin layer. And slide that in there. Use the excess to just get a thin film where it would contact the perch. Okay, let that sit. Go ahead and grab just a little bit here. Go inside. Less important, still you want to do a nice job. Okay, got that. Now we'll grab the lever. I also do want to put just a little bit in here too, because that cable does need to be able to pivot in there. Ready to install. You want to make sure you got your bolt ready. Let's go ahead and grab that clutch cable. Slip that in. Just kind of rotate that. I want to be cognizant of that bushing. The grease is helping to hold it in there. I'm going to use my finger to depress the clutch switch while I slide the lever into position. Once I have it into position, I can let go of that clutch switch. If you're trying to get it in there and it takes a lot of force, you could be up against that clutch switch piston, and if you just force it, you could crack it off. You don't want to do that, okay? Let's get the lock nut. Get that started here on the bottom. Okay, once we get that started, we'll spin it far enough that we just get to the locking portion of the nut. We can't go finger tight anymore. I'm gonna put a little downward pressure on the bolt. It's shaped in such a way that it locks, it engages with the OE clutch perch to hold itself in position. So now we'll just go ahead and get this torqued down. Make sure your lever is moving freely, which it is. You know, and even this, you don't want to reef down on this and damage the clutch perch. Pull it all together. It needs to be just tight enough so it won't come loose, and you have the locking nut there too. Okay, so now, obviously this lever is adjustable like it is on the brake side by using this, okay? We need to set the free play in our clutch cable. So we need to lengthen the cable again. So I'll rotate the adjuster out. It is very important that there is always a bit of free play in this lever. If you rotate this until it's completely tight, like say for example here, like there's nothing, almost no free play, what's going to happen is you're going to be holding the clutch open just the tiniest little bit. You might not notice it when you first start riding, but it'll slip very easily on a high horsepower bike like this. In no time at all, your clutch will be shot. Okay, so that would be too tight. And we're going to rotate it, the adjuster, until I've got an acceptable amount of free play. That's still pretty tight. All right, now there, clearly we've got some free play. And from here, you want to tune it to what makes sense for you. We're all different riders. You know, some of us like the clutch to engage right at the end. Some of us want it to engage closer to the bar. And this is where you'll have the opportunity to kind of set that. And having a length adjustable lever, right? You can rotate this to bring the lever closer to the bar, or have it farther out from the bar to really find that sweet spot for you and your riding style. Okay, now we're going to take this one step further for our STG project bike. We're going to install their Raceline remote adjuster. Okay, this is going to mount up over on the left side, so you can easily dial in the brake lever from the clip-on side while you're riding the bike, while you're out on track. That is super badass. Okay, so you get a little brake fade, you can just easily hit this, right, with your free hand, your clutch hand, which you can take that off and you're on a straightaway, no problem. In order to install this, and this is more of a higher level thing, right? I don't know if you'd really do this on a street bike or not. Also, it looks pretty badass. The first thing we want to do is we need to take the adjuster that comes from CRG on this lever. Okay, and this will work on their Raceline levers or on the carbon lever. So we're going to remove that, save everything. You're also going to take off that spring. You no longer need that tension spring. You need to install the piece that will then grab the cable. Okay, so we're going to make sure that that is loose. Which it is. Got that backed out. Okay, let's get this thing. Okay, just kind of rotate it around until you get it started. It's not really threading on there, but I just needed to get it to slide over. It gets to a certain point and it just bottoms out right there. Okay, once it bottoms out, you need to snug this up. You know, this is closed course operation stuff only. Make sure it's good and secure. Everything's working. Okay, that's something I might even come back and maybe use just a little bit of thread locker on that down the road to make sure that I've got it in a good place. Okay, now the cable. The cable itself, this will be adjustable length. Okay, you can trim this down to fit your application. Everybody runs their controls in a different configuration. So the first thing you want to do is just slide the cable end in, like so. You want to make sure it's bottomed out So you've got as much of it in there as possible. Once you've done that, you need two 8mm wrenches. Okay, so I'm going to go finger tight here to start. And as you tighten this up, it's going to compress around the end of that cable and capture it. Okay, kind of give it a tug and you can see how smoothly, all right, that's working. That's super bitchin'. Now we'll go to the other side and get the thumb dial installed. Okay, this is also, it's important to note here, this isn't one of those just super simple direct fit parts. Odds are we're going to have to adjust the cable length itself, okay? And every bike's going to look a little bit different. Depends on the configuration of your controls. So I need to be able to slide that on here. I'm not quite sure how this is all going to go right now. So let's get that attack zero offset tube out of there, like so. I think I want to start by putting it in between the switch pod. And the switch pod is actually something that's going to be going away here pretty soon too. There's a new product coming from one of my favorite brands that's going to help me eliminate that. So I'm pretty stoked for that. So let's see how this fits in here. And the switch pod, I checked that out. That's a no-go there. Okay, so we just learned that. Slide it back out. No big deal. We still needed to pull the bar. I'm going to slide it and we'll start the install with it on this side of the clutch perch. Let's just get it slid over. Let's get the bar back in there. That line back up. Okay, where exactly do I want this to go? There's a strong possibility that, like I said, down the road, probably change its position once, I've landed on what I'm going to do with a switch pod. So now let's tighten up that clutch perch again. And the way I had it set up, I had it as far in as it would go. Okay. All right, now good clearance here. And realistically, even though it's on the other side of the switch pod, it's still not going to take a lot to get to that. Okay, so that's a piece of cake. Let's start to consider cable length. So you can see here at full length, yeah, it's a little on the excessive side there. I really see it's all bowed out. Right, that's a no-go. You want to consider sweep back and forth. That's pretty important. Exactly where do you want to put it? I can't have it up that high. It's going to put a bunch of tension on it, so it's probably going to be more out front like this. Kind of changes length a little bit as you squeeze the lever. You can see that. Okay, so for sure, what I do know right now is, kind of going to position it like that. And I want to make sure that, if anything, my first cut is just, it's leaving too much. So that looks like it's going to be too long. I'm going to cut here, just using side cutters. We'll see how that works. All right, cut through it, no problem. Okay. We're not going to cut the outer cover or fit that until I'm totally happy with the length of the cable itself, okay? So once again, get it bottomed out in there. Make sure you hold it in place. Let's get the wrenches. I hate to admit this, I'm really not fast enough at this point to need this, but damn, it looks kick-ass on the bike. And in my opinion, it doesn't matter how fast you are when you look this good. Okay, so man, I think I kind of like that. Okay, ignore what you see happening with the cable right there, because that's gonna, when I got a cover on it, that's all gonna change. Okay, that works. Okay, now let's identify the length that we need for this. Okay, so we're going to take and loosen this back up so I can pull the cable out of the adjuster over here. Okay, now kind of hold my thumb on it to see how much it's going to slide in there. So we're probably talking about 3/4 of an inch goes inside. Okay, so when we're trimming this, you want to factor that in. So let's just kind of get it so that you got the two together. We're thinking about 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to cut this bad boy right about here. First cut. Okay. What I'll do too is I'll kind of open this up. It did compress it a little bit, and you want it to just flow in there nicely, so use something to just kind of stretch that back out. You know, you could also, when you're cutting this, to avoid this step, you could do something like use a hacksaw or something, but this will work. Just want to try and get that as circular as possible once again. I pulled the cable off the bike so that we can slide the finished end through it. Just easier to do that. And that's how you want it to be. You want it to be nice and easy. So I'm going to put the cable back on the bike. I know I like the length of the cable right now. So I'm going to go ahead and slip this back in the brake side. And this is the end that I cut that I'm installing over here now. Make sure it bottoms out. Okay, that is now on the lever side. Everything looks good. Come back over to the clutch side. Let's double check that length. Make sure this slips through there nice and easy. We'll probably put a little bit of lubrication on this cable as well. Okay, and that's sliding through really nice. That's what you want. I like the length there. Okay, that bottoms out in there. Okay. Okay, that all looks pretty good. Yeah, I think for me, ideally, looking at this right now, man, if I didn't have this switch pot on this bike, right, I had something that was more slim, I'd really like to have this even closer to the grip itself, but that's just not an option the way this bike is set up, and that switch pod is necessary right now. You can always get a replacement cable too if that's what you need. If you want to change the length down the road. Actually feels pretty good right now. Let's go ahead and snug this up. So hopefully you're getting a sense that, this isn't just, just this super easy plug and play, everything's perfect. No, you're gonna spend some time on this. And what you don't wanna do is, come out of the gate and just cut everything at a length that's just, you find is not gonna work for you, and then you're stuck. Okay, so take your time with it. Sweep your bars. Make sure that cable's not going to catch anywhere, and you know what? Actually, I might just stop right there. Just kind of leave it. And that on the fly adjustment, that is just super bitchin'. That's going to be nice on this bike, especially this one does have a tendency too when the brakes heat up a bit. You get a little bit of fade over here. It's not horrible, but you do get a little bit of fade, and this will help you adjust for that without having to pull off, and there's no way you're gonna be riding on the track and fiddle with a lever on the throttle side. That's a no-go for sure. So that's really what this remote adjust is used for, and it's a great fit with this carbon lever that CRG offers. It also works with their Raceline lever. So there you have it. Here's the install. The key points right now are this. Before you take the bike out and ride it, I want you to double check and triple check everything. Make sure you haven't created any clearance issues. Everything is moving freely. Becomes even a little more important when you've installed something like this remote adjust, and that's going to be only for track bikes, right? That's not really a road going mod, but you're changing everything when you put that there. Okay, so I'll spend a bunch of time. Make sure that is all good to go. Make sure that clutch adjustment is good so that you're not going to create a situation where the clutch is slipping, okay? Once you've identified everything is in the right place and you feel good about it, take it for that first road test or the first couple laps of the session when you've done a bunch of work on a bike. Bring the bike back in, double check, make sure everything is good to go. CRG is arguably the best brand in levers. I think it's safe to argue that. They've been around a long time, several variants. They have a very solid track record. When you see the quality of the product, when you open the package, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, and why I'm also recommending that you avoid some of those really cheap levers that are out there. I know the prices can be tempting, but the stakes can also be really high if you have an issue with brake lever locking, tolerance issues, failure. This is the CRG carbon lever with remote adjust install on our 2018 Suzuki GSX-R1000R STG project bike.